Okay.
Hi, chat. We're
Hello,
here.
hello.
Hello.
Did you watch that whole show?
Oh, I mean, I've read that whole book series.
Okay.
If you're
Well,
referencing what I think you are.
but the delivery is so good in that show.
What is
it
this?
Really.
Series of
Okay.
unfortunate events. Not to be
Oh,
confused
okay.
with the Jim Carrey movie, but the Neil Patrick Harris Netflix show.
Yes.
So good.
It's amazing. Oh man.
It is probably the most honest most honest adaptation from book to media that I've ever seen in ever. It's just so good.
Yeah, Neil
I didn't even
Patrick
know that
Harris.
they did that. I knew they made the
Incredible.
movie. I didn't know that they did the series.
Series is so much better, and they actually completed it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, like I saw they're making Good Omens season 2, and I'm like, how are you doing that? Like, there's no it's over. Like, wow, how are you doing that? I mean, I'll watch it, but it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing that? But okay. Oh, I do have Audacity open, but I still have the bonus episode open, so I need to close that.
Ooh, okay. Thank you for reminding me. I just now hit the record button.
So you didn't.
No, you don't need to yet. Yeah, you don't need to yet.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
Yeah. Well,
we'll tell you when to. Yeah.
Okay.
No worries. You're good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're not like Blizzlet who does the whole like cold open thing and records a bit before the show. Like,
yeah.
This is just for the special edit version, I guess. Only for
the raw audio.
Get here early.
Yeah. And the patrons. I mean, the patrons get this because we record. Well, no, the patrons don't get this because they don't get until I press the record button.
Just people who are here in Twitch.
Yeah.
They get as soon as we hit record, and that's fine. Really, what the patrons get? I mean, yes, it is the raw audio, and I do a fair bit of editing, but really the main thing is they get it like a few days early because because it often takes me a minute to.
Yeah. I think good things
come
to those who wait.
It's posted on Sunday, and it just is what it is.
Yeah, I'm just checking the Firefox to make sure that I have the browser set up right.
I think in an ideal world, it would get posted Friday or Saturday, but it's just.
You know what?
It's
you do what you need to do. That's all I'm going to say. It gets posted when it gets posted, and it is neither early nor late. It arrives exactly when it intends to. I may have been drafting some Magic the last couple of days.
Oh, right. I need to go pick up like a couple boxes of that.
Oh, do you?
Trying to go for the One Ring or?
Oh, no, I'm gonna go for one of the like, Elvish or Dwarvish ones.
Has that even been found yet? I've seen some tweets about it, but I don't know how accurate or valid they are.
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't seen anybody saying that they've gotten there, but yeah. I mean, the draft is interesting. So, but I basically like played enough of like the last set that I just like bought the battle pass on like the last day, so that I'd have like 2 draft tokens and like enough like gems saved up.
Oh man!
Like I don't really want to use that on like March of the Machine anymore. I want to use it for the new thing, but I didn't want to pay like the $50 for the the draft playset. So
I have 2 modes for Magic.
Yeah.
Playing and like trying to qualify for the monthly stuff, which actually I guess I don't even know if they're still doing that. And not playing at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll do drafts and then I'll hate play standard until I have enough gold to be able to do another draft. So
no, I see. I would just like pay in to do more drafts.
Oh yeah.
To like get my limited ranking into qualification range, because you could qualify for stuff in limited, but then of course I would have to. The actual thing would be standard, and
yeah,
I have to figure that.
Yeah,
and
then you'd have to actually play standard, which I mean, which would mean that you'd have to play standard.
It sounds so much worse than Hearthstone standard.
Oh,
it's you're describing it.
So much worse.
It's bad. It's
because of lands mostly.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
just like the games are over in like 4 turns, or they take like 2 hours. Like there's no middle
Whoa.
ground.
Okay, yeah, it's a
I think
little
that's
a
an
little bit much.
exaggeration.
Okay, fine. But
There's
like,
a
I mean,
timer still.
well, yeah, okay, fine. But like I think the last tournament that I watched, it was like they were having to play fast because if they didn't, they were going to run out of time in the
Yeah.
round.
It is a different experience when it's not like when you don't have asynchronous turns. When you can do stuff
Yeah.
on the opponent's turn and you like always have to be there hitting confirm and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. Like anyway, we should probably record a show.
Yeah, we should talk about Hearthstone. We should do that. So
Okay.
yeah, I was just waiting to see if anybody was gonna say that they could hear us, but you know, that's cool. Because like I'm always worried that like nobody can hear. I think it seems like it's going, but
Okay.
so
Cool.
you know,
Well,
but whatever. We can
recording?
Okay.
Record button.
So I will start recording. Okay. So generally what I do is I count down from 3, 2, 1, and then we clap twice. And we try to get them somewhat lined up and usually fail spectacularly. Just so that Edel can line up the tracks when she's editing. In theory. Okay.
it does.
All right.
So-
well, I'm really good at beats, so I'll be in time.
Okay. All right. So 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. Okay. Oh, that was almost there. Look at that. All right. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
I grant you permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred!
Hello and welcome to episode 401 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. And from Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And from Orgrimmar, Indiana, we have ClarkHELLSCREAM. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is truly an honor.
Yeah, the timing worked out pretty perfectly on this. So
Could not be better. Absolutely
Yeah.
could not be better.
And from all around the world, we have you listeners. Thanks always for your reviews. We just recorded a bonus episode where we read some of the reviews from the past, I guess, year, since it's been forever since we did a bonus episode. But, you know, always appreciate those. If you keep them coming, love the 5-star reviews. So we're going to do a little bit of an interview with Clark before we talk about the copious amounts of news we have. So, Clark, first off, for anyone that doesn't know you, could you just give us sort of a brief background of your history with Hearthstone, how you got into the game, etc.?
Yeah, no problem, man. For those who don't know, my name is ClarkHELLSCREAM. I've got a Twitch channel and a YouTube channel. Started streaming on Twitch around like 2018, almost early 2017. Been making YouTube content since about 2019, 2020. I started off honestly just playing in the the lunch tables with my friends, but then found a love for competitive Hearthstone and open cups and tournaments. Then once I learned more about the scene in general, I started streaming and focusing more on wacky combos and just highlighting cards that people usually immediately dismiss. And nowadays, I'm still kind of doing the exact same thing, except I try to take my insanity to ladder and often hit my head against the wall because it's difficult to do still. But I love playing the decks that a lot of people may, they may not think about entirely as they should. I like to play the good stuff that's fun.
So when you are playing some of these wackier combos, what sort of motivates you to try over and over to get the one cool thing to work? Because sometimes it feels like a lot of trying for like that one video or clip.
It's almost like, like achievement hunting in video games. It's like that exact same itch where it's like, I know that I can do it and I just want to be able to like have this thing done. So that way, if I ever need to like show it off or tell people, hey, this is technically possible, don't make fun of my deck, guys. That's usually where it comes from, is like that sense of accomplishment that you get after popping off a really cool combo. And when when you're the one that created it, you just want to make sure that you go first full circle, I guess.
Sure. So, okay, what's the coolest combo that you've ever pulled off?
So there's a lot of combos that could take the cake in this one, but the first, I've looked at the notes, so I kind of have a lot of these answers somewhat pre-prepared.
Sure.
It is my 30-turn OTK, I would actually have to argue. The way that it worked.
That sounds like a deck I would play.
Yeah, you would. It was a Quest Mage OTK, but it was right when I think Parrot ended up getting changed from an 8-mana card to a 6-mana card. So the whole point of the combo is to play Parrot after you play Time Warp, but there's an infinite loop that you can set up with Potion of Illusion, Pyromancer, and Tour Guide, so that way you have just enough mana to just literally ping your opponent every single turn. And you just do that 30 times. And I actually had someone that sat through the entire animation of it, so there are those people.
Feel like this person must have known you were making a video and decided to take one for the team.
I mean, that was actually good. That was actually kind of them. Like, I mean, there are a bunch of achievements for like kill, end the game with this or the other, and nobody ever gets them because people just concede when they see what's coming. So that was a kindness that somebody did to you that day. I mean, they might have recognized your name and said, "Okay, well, he's doing something for YouTube. Let's be nice." But
yeah, that's honestly like one of my biggest pet peeves is when people concede way too soon because of how many sweet things I try to do.
Yeah, I think that's part of why they implemented that rule, a sort of loose rule in the theory crafting streams of like, please don't concede because people might be, making videos and stuff. Yeah. So, okay, if this is different, because, I mean, that does sound like it would be APM intensive for me, but I know you have some pretty serious APM game. So what is the most APM intensive combo that you've ever pulled off?
So one of the reasons why I love APM decks is because like you have to start immediately, and if you wait a second or two, then you're already failing the combo. I absolutely love like that test of knowledge and quick thinking that Hearthstone turns can sometimes require. But my favorite APM combo that I've ever done is Mogu Cultist Druid, which is like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody do anything with Mogu Cultist in the Druid class. And the way that this combo works, I think you have to start with like an alignment in order to like set all of your cards to 1 mana. Then you play Generous Mummy. You silence it over to the opponent, so that way your 1 mana cards become 0, and then you can trigger an infinite combo with Elise the Enlightened, Mogu Cultist, Faceless Manipulator, and specifically Mulch. Because if you use Naturalize, then your opponent's going to deck out of cards before we're finished with the combo, and I'm not going to let that happen. So you can easily set up, 1 Highkeeper Raw, which deals 20 damage after the turn is over, in case people don't know what that card does. But you play 7 Mogu Cultists with the 1 Cultist and 1 Faceless. You make a bunch of copies. And then you switch gears when the Highkeeper Raw's on the field, so that way the Faceless Manipulators can copy the Highkeeper Raw, and you're mulching your own minions in order to make the board space. And I have done this where I end my turn with 7 Highkeeper Raws.
Oh my God.
The most perfect combo that I have ever come up with, and I really don't think I'm going to top it.
I feel like I'm going to have to go back and watch that one because there's just so many moving parts to keep track of in a mental board state.
If you want to look it up, the easiest way to find it is my 10K subscriber special on YouTube. And it really goes into detail about how many times it took me to actually hit the right combo, because obviously if you make one wrong move, it all falls apart.
Sure.
We were I forget what stream I was in that we were talking about the board game Mousetrap today, and that sounds like the Mousetrap of Hearthstone decks.
Oh, what a great board game. My goodness. Oldie but a goodie. Well, if anyone wants to see that combo, definitely check out Clark's YouTube. All right. So some quick hits before we dive into Life and Ladder and then news, because lots of stuff to cover today. So what is your favorite class? I know you play a bunch of stuff.
So right now, I would have to say like Death Knight's one of my favorite classes, but the class I have the most wins with is Druid, so that would have to be my number 2.
Okay. I suppose.
I know, I'm getting judged pretty hard right now.
No, I'm just a Druid hater.
Edel does a show with me every week, and I play her most hated deck ever, so you'll probably be okay.
Is it Control Priest? What's
oh yeah,
deck?
it sure is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about ever. Probably at least in my memory, Jade Druid is probably my most hated deck ever because Spreading Plague, the 5-mana Spreading Plagues, just they hurt my soul.
Druid hero card, Ultimate Infestation, all the good ramp tools. Druid literally had no weaknesses.
But I've been a Druid hater since Force Roar. I mean, it really goes way back.
That's why I loved it. Force of Nature was my first golden card.
All right, so what is your favorite deck of all time then?
This is a really hard question.
It always is.
Because there's so many like really interesting decks, but the first ones that come to mind, they're pretty much all degenerate combo decks though. D6 Warlock I think was really fun, albeit very, unbalanced and out of control. It was another one of those like APM decks where you had to know exactly what you were doing. Another example of this is actually Celestial Alignment Cthulhu the Shattered Druid, where you could potentially do a turn 0 OTK, which is just when you play the alignment, you can also do all of the pieces all in one turn sort of thing. And then a wild deck that I really enjoy is Anyfin Paladin with Finja and Thakal Giants, so that way you can play turn 3, 4, and 2 8/8s immediately. And the reason why I love that deck is because it's the deck that I hit rank 1 Legend in Wild with.
Nice. No, I think that deck also has a special place in my heart for sure.
I love Finja. He's just such a neat little card, and I wish there were more cards like that. He's so flavorful.
I loved the period in Hearthstone where we had Water Rogue, right? That was
that was just that was such a good deck.
So, in terms of the characters now, who would you say is your favorite Hearthstone character?
Easy, the Lich King. The Lich King is just by far the coolest thing that I think Warcraft has ever done. And I am a big fan of the Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion. So like all of the heroes being turned into Death Knights, like that's just, I don't think we've ever topped that in terms of like the art and like all of like just the what's the word I'm looking for? The themes that they were pushing in that expansion. Festival of Legends came very close. I want to make that very apparent because this expansion's been so flavorful. But the idea of Death Knights is just so satisfying to me.
Yeah, like that trailer for that. I remember when like Ben Bro was on stage, like introducing it. Like that trailer to this day still gives me chills.
I know, exactly, and that's the whole point. Like, it's just so cool.
But it was so good, just Jaina doing that whole monologue. Like normally, like most of the trailers have the the fun music and whatever. It was just like Jaina talking really sinister for like a minute and a half, and I was completely there for
those who wield it.
Yeah. Yes. Very good times. I think many people would agree with you in terms of that being sort of the peak. Again, have super loved Festival of Legends and March of the Lich King and stuff. But that was definitely a highlight moment. So, okay. Stepping back from Hearthstone. Are you a sandwich person?
I am definitely a sandwich person. Okay. I come from an Italian family, so I kind of have to.
Okay. So what is your perfect sandwich order?
Like, it depends on exactly where we're going, but I am a big chicken teriyaki person. So like first thing that just came to mind is like there's this chain called Penn Station. I absolutely love them. Getting a chicken teriyaki with onions and mushrooms. It's just perfect.
I didn't expect that when you dropped the Italian background, chicken teriyaki.
Yeah, I know, right? Kind of a misdirection there, but
All right, cool. Well, are you ready to do a show?
I'm ready. Let's get this started.
Okay. Well, I will kick us off with Life and Ladder this time. Mage is kind of the only thing I'm enjoying. I really hate how prevalent Control Priest is right now. Some of it is perhaps to do with where I am rank-wise. I entered Legend a bit lower than usual. I haven't been playing as much because, oh my god, this past few months and games is nuts. Like, we had Diablo 4, we had Tears of the Kingdom. I don't even know how I'm going to handle the fact that Final Fantasy 16 just came out. Like, I probably will have to touch that in like a couple of years when it's on sale or something.
I'm actively ignoring it. Like, I'm just like, I know it's there, and like, I will wait for it to go on like PlayStation Plus Extra or something, because I just can't. Like, I can't take on
Spider-Man
another
2
game
also
right now.
just came out, so that's a big one. I need to get a PS5 so I can finally enjoy it, but huge Spider-Man fan here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like all the AAA stuff that was, missing from last year. Because I feel like it was really just like, what, Horizon and Elden Ring last year? And God of War? And then...
Well, Splatoon 3 came out around this time last year, and that was a... That was an obsession in my household. Not me particularly, but the kids were. Like, because this is right when the kids are getting out of school, right? So they have the time to sink into these games. So I'm actually surprised that nobody's come to me and said, hey, when are we getting Final Fantasy 16? But I think my oldest, who's the one who's most likely to do that, is still working her way through Tears of the Kingdom. So
right. I mean, that game is just insanely massive.
Yeah.
So... Anyway, so I've been playing a bit less Hearthstone, and when I do, I face some Control Priests, and every once in a while, Blood Decay. I don't have as much of a problem with Blood Decay. My biggest thing about Control Priests from time immemorial, since Thoughtsteal, is I just hate feeling like I've been killed by my own cards, that like I am being punished for having good cards in my deck. So like I got patchworked like 2 to 3 times by this priest opponent, and of course, it's not in their deck, so was not having a great time with that. And it was kind of like I would do okay with some of my board-based decks, I'd be enjoying them, and then suddenly I would just feel like I couldn't do anything against some of the slower things, either a relic DH that like did the thing where they just flipped the board, right? And like maybe I could handle my board being cleared, but the fact that they flipped it like by making a big board of their own as well is just too much. And then Control Priest doing control things. I just kind of come back home to Mage, and I do a 30 card Mage. There's no way I pronounce this right, but like Keyuan? I don't know.
Oh yeah,
a while ago.
Yeah, the Chinese, the one who posts all the Chinese decks. Yeah.
Yes. They're 30 card Mage.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
I took out the 1/2s that give you an Arcane Bolt and put in the dispenser, the mech dispenser.
Oh, the remix dispenser bot?
Yeah, because it's just fun. And I've really been enjoying just sort of, if I can, waiting until I get the coins. And then that means when you have your Ramath turn, you've played a bunch of coins. So you can like still do stuff after the Ramath, because oftentimes when you've played Infinitize the Maxitude, you've got a full hand and like you're going to burn a card. But with some coins in there, you actually can free up some hand space by like playing something after the Ramath. And so I've liked that addition. Another option that I haven't gotten around to doing yet, but I think could be cool, is to like get secrets off it, and then you get to replay the secrets off Ramath, which that's always kind of nice as well. So yeah, Mage has been where I've been finding my fun, even though for a while I was doing like a pure dude paladin, and that was actually going pretty well.
Yeah, I've ended up with Mage too. I was trying to play Control Priest on stream Monday night, and I think I only won the one game where somebody just like auto conceded to me as soon as they saw Redithal pop. But I was getting cheesed out by like just. I mean, in one game, to be fair, I missed lethal and then I just got destroyed. but like there was one game where I got wiped out by back-to-back insatiable devours that came from the deck of a Blood Death Knight. And I was like, what? Like, the first one, fine. And then literally the next turn, they did it again, and they were both infused. And I'm like, what? How? Why? So I decided I'm not playing Control Priest if all I'm facing is just random nonsense. I've seen more, like, secret Thief Rogues this week than I would... I mean, I don't ever want to see any, but certainly I queued into, like, 2 in a row today. And I don't know who posted that deck, but you're not getting a coin conceit from me, that's for sure. But the chat convinced me to play Evolve Shaman after that. And this is the one that's kind of like Totem Shaman, except it doesn't run... Like, it doesn't run Gigantotem and, like, and a lot of the Totem synergies. And it doesn't run Bloodlust. It runs Pack the House. Yeah.
Yeah, the Yotsuna list.
Yeah, so it's fun. It did pretty well. I went like 7-3 with it over the stream, and like I had one game where I was playing against a hunter, and I just could never get bored. They got me down to 12, and I was facing down lethal, and then I just said, okay, well fine, screw it, let's go. So I played Baroness Vosh, and I either played Muck Pools or I had a Muck Pools on board. I don't remember, and evolved the Baroness Vosh, got something, doesn't matter. Played Convincing Disguise and rolled into a Darkdawn Grathier, and then all of a sudden I was just at 24, and like, okay, well, I guess that's how we win with this deck. And you just kind of like pull some of these like ridiculous just turns out of your butt, and it doesn't, like, if you have any sort of a board, they have to remove it because they don't know what's gonna turn into. But I mean, if you lose board, you're pretty toast, but you have comeback potential. But I was still like, I ended up going to 30 card mage also. I think this was Meaty's list that I was playing. It's not running the robot, but I think I like the idea of the robot. And Nettle, I might need your list because that sounds better than the list I've been playing. But I had this one game. This is the one I sent you, Edel, yesterday, where the message was just, I got vengeance on my people for you, because I queued into a Control Priest,
wrong.
and I got a lot of skeletons early, and I had gotten multiple copies of, is it like Unearthed Dead or whatever the druid card is that resurrects all your minions that cost 2 or less. So I just got all my skeletons. Unending Swarm, yeah. So I got all my skeletons back. Like I think I rewinded it and played it again, and just had like all the skeletons. And then finally, like, the priest plays, they got a copy of my Kel'Thuzad, and they played it out with 0 skeletons. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna kill it. Like, I'm killing stuff anyway, so I kill it. They played it again and Zola'd it. And I'm like, okay, they really want a Kel'Thuzad. And I think I killed that one too, and there was a third one that I either couldn't kill or decided to just leave up, and then they whirlpooled it. They really wanted to whirlpool this Kel'Thuzad because they'd seen how many skeletons I had. But I'd also gotten a Due Process off of the Prismatic Elemental, and Ramath replayed the Due Process, and it turns out that's pretty good in Mage too. And I ended up like pulling multiple Ajaras and shuffling the spells into my deck, and then playing Finley and shuffling everything into my deck, and just fatigued. I think they went to like 9 or 10 fatigue at the end of the game.
Oh yeah,
and it was delightful.
I watched this and I was like, wow. Well, they were so focused on the howitzer in their face that they didn't realize they'd already been poisoned. Like, yeah,
exactly.
It's just this slow death of the Due Process.
Well, they thought they were fine, right? Like, God. They thought they got my win condition, and it's like, well, you got a win condition, but like I've lost a Due Process enough as a priest that I knew once I got offered that was my win con. Like there was no question, because even at 30 cards and they were at 40, it didn't matter. Like it was really. And they were trying to, like, shuffle stuff back in. It wasn't working. And I just ended up, despite the fact that I was at 30 cards, just got enough of it. But it was like, I went into that. I'm like, you're not beating me with Control Priest. Like, that's not a thing that's happening. I'm sorry. Like, this is, I know this deck well enough to know how to beat it.
My pride won't stand for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not going to be out priested by someone, and who's picked up the deck because it's the hot new thing. No, I was born in it.
I was here when the sacred texts were written.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny that you guys are talking about Maid, because that's actually the class that I've been kind of going towards these past couple of days.
Okay.
I have been doing the degenerate stuff like I always do, but this is the very first time in like an expansion that I like kind of helped like pioneer an archetype a little bit. I'm talking about Undead Druid with the Thaddeus scam and the Jailer combo.
Oh, so you're the one who we have to blame for that. Okay.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to say I'm partly to blame for it, because the real person that's been doing most of the heavy lifting has been Mr. Yagut.
Yeah.
So like I ended up I had this like idea of putting Jailer in the ETC in particular, because if you're on even polarities, then you just play ETC and immediately into Jailer. And I thought, this was just like a high roll thing. You don't want to do it every game. Turns out it's actually really good to play Jailer against like mages and stuff like that. And then eventually people started putting Tony in the ETC. So now there's a step further where you can end up, playing Jailer, taking the deck. And if the priest doesn't have like a Whirlpool or something, then you automatically lock them out. But Mr. Yagut kind of found like the really good list, but my list was doing pretty okay to the point where it actually popped up on HS replay data. That's the very first time that like I built a deck from scratch and it ended up like kind of going somewhere. So I've been playing a lot of the Mr. Yagut list, and I will say there's some poetic justice here, because I started with like a 60% win rate after like 150 games. Then once we've reached like 200 games, I had a massive loss streak. Like I was almost at top 200 legend about like a week or two ago, and now I'm struggling to get out of 3K legend, because I'm just you see so many weird things when you're at a certain MMR, like kind of like what you're talking about with Insatiable Devourer, which I have not seen at all during this expansion. So that's just when Hearthstone knows, and it's just Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, I was because I was talking in Lorinda's stream about that, because I tried the deck and I just couldn't win with it, and he's like, my feeling was that like it felt like Big Priest, where 30% of the games are very easy, like you get the curve and it works out, and then like the rest of them, like you draw the deck wrong, and then that's where the skill comes in. And I said like it felt like even when it works, it wasn't working really well. He's like, go watch Mr. Yagut stream. So I went and watched Mr. Yagut stream, and that was apparently the same thing was happening to him, because he had been at like rank 1 legend with it, and he was down at like 70 when I was watching him, and he had just like lost like a whole bunch in a row, and then he was starting to mess around with the list, and it was going worse, and he was clearly getting agitated at chat, who was I mean, his chat is not necessarily kind when he's not not performing up to par. So I felt bad for him, but yeah, I think the meta just shifted against it. Like people just got tired of losing against it and just like started playing things that don't lose to it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened in my experience too. Like I also feel like the novelty kind of wore down, and people knew how to counter it. Like case in point, in the Druid mirror, you don't just, I mean, you do in theory want to just throw the Whomper as soon as possible, but when you're doing the mirror, they also have the silence. So if you get silence, then that just kind of ruins everything. And I keep talking about this on my stream whenever I play the deck. It is not an easy deck to pilot, even when obviously when you do the scam and you get the 10-10 Thaddeus, or you get the 11-11 Thaddeus against like a warrior or something on turn 5, turn 6, it's just game over. But there are so many situations to where you're going up against like a priest, you're going up against sometimes mages, where they just know what you're going to do, and they build up their entire game plan on stalling the late game. Case in point, I went up against a mage the other day on stream, and they ended up like having enough stall to where I ended up taking fatigue, and unfortunately I didn't have my fanboy in that situation. So I kind of got punished for not waiting a little bit longer. And it's like that weird line you have to like teeter-totter across, where it's like, I could go in and automatically win the game, but if they have X, Y, and Z, then I'm just going to automatically lose. Case in point, if a priest has Whirlpool, then, if you play Jailer, you're just screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, because like if you wait for the perfect hand, then you're just giving them the time to be able to copy solid alibis or find more blizzards or or whatever it is that they're going to be able to like just keep you from being able to get there. And it doesn't, I mean, you have some time, but like when you're playing the jailer, you're just on the clock and you need to be able
Yeah.
to get it done. So you can't always wait for the perfect hand.
And it's kind of like the same thing with the other deck that I've been enjoying in Rage Warrior. I'm just really happy that Warrior has a playable deck after being essentially invalid for so long. But even in Rage Warrior, starting to like kind of, fall off a little bit because, I mean, I don't really know what exactly changed about the meta to make it so unfavorable for Warrior, but I'm just not getting wins with it anymore. Maybe I'm not playing perfectly, but it just seems that like there's been this kind of change and everything feels like it's good right now. Like there's a lot of diversity, and when there's a lot of diversity, you're going to naturally go up against the decks that you don't want to see when you're playing a good deck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it can beat the control decks, but it can also just lose, and sometimes it's not like you can play around some things, but also like sometimes they just hit the dirty rat on the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And then your game plan's over. It's like it's not, you can play around it and win that matchup like a percentage of the time and even like a positive percent of the time, but like there are just games where you just cannot win against one of the control decks with the Enraged Warrior. Because that was my first thought too. It's like, okay, well, it was losing to the Paladin, so now Paladin's gone, so it should be good, but it's just like everything else that was there was just able to just shut it down. I wasn't having the win rate that I was having before the mini set.
Yeah, and to kind of reflect Edelweiss's point, one of the reasons why I really don't like Priest right now is not just the fact that they're killing me with my own cards, but I'm doing all of the work and they're getting the payoff, especially in the Enraged Warrior matchup where I make a big Remornia, they steal it, and then they play it before me. It's like, how is that fair? Why do you get the 30 attack Remornia? It should still be a 5/10. I don't care.
Yeah, I would feel less bad if stuff was like a base copy. I think the big case, right, is when you play Lorthamar Theron as like your, anti-control deck thing in ETC and something like Hunter, and then the priest is just like, oh, I'll take those Hollow Hounds that are 6/12s now. So yeah, definitely. Regarding Enraged Warrior, I almost feel like we may see a situation where, like, depending on the meta, people will have to adjust on whether it is correct or not to do riffs. Because I feel like right now you maybe don't want riffs. You want something that like hits the ground running faster. But often people don't just like swap lists like that.
Seen any riffless decks? What are they playing in replacement of it?
I mean, I go like more fire stuff, and you have more minions, right? So you're less frequently finding yourself without spells for the champion, or without stuff to buff in your hand because you've just got riffs. But I know I'm often like the odd one out in those kinds of situations. But I know as well we have a couple of warrior enthusiasts, World 8 and Enzo in our Discord, who are just like, riffs feel weird. Let's try and go back to like the Cruel Taskmaster, egg Enraged Warrior, where you just like
I think I did see that list. Cruel Taskmaster might actually have a lot of application, in all honesty.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's not as much like Unholy and Frost Death Knight as there used to be, and not as much like Undead Priest, because I found that like Verse Riff was the way that you don't just lose on the spot to an Arms Dealer that's snowballing for a couple turns. But I guess also if you have more fire spells and Wild Pyromancers or whatever, and then you don't have that kind of a problem with the Arms Dealer just snowballing. Because that was my main problem before the mini set, was just like, I need to have an answer for Arms Dealer on one, because if it sticks, I just lose. Like you just end up taking too much damage before you're able to. Now that's not a problem because nobody's playing those decks, because everybody's playing Priest. So you don't want to.
That's kind of the funny thing. Like Frost DK absolutely dropped. Like it went from being the best deck in the game to being tier 3 at the very best. It's kind of insane how this mini set changed things this much, because we haven't seen a mini set impact the meta nearly as hard as this one did.
Yeah. Though I did see Rekfam post that he got to rank 1 legend with it, but he's also Rekfam. We've seen people get to rank 1 legend with Boon Priest after it was nerfed too. So like your mileage may vary, but I guess if you still want to make things cold, you can still do that. But we should probably start talking about the news, because we we have a lot of it. We're already half an hour in, and we got a lot to talk about. So why don't we do that?
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So not too much this week. Just a new mode. MBD. So Tuesday there was a blog post that came out from the Hearthstone team introducing Hearthstone's new mode Twist. So starting in patch 26.6, coming later this month, Hearthstone will be replacing the classic mode with the new mode called Twist. So it's going to be a rotating format. It's going to last for some unspecified amount of time. That we're going into a beta season starting with 26.6, which will run for the rest of June and then July, the month of July. And they will have different formats for each time that it comes around. The format that we're going to have for this first season is called New Age, which is going to be all the sets from Ashes and Outland forward. So basically from when Demon Hunter was introduced all the way. So that's 4 years worth of sets. So kind of if for Magic players, kind of the equivalent of Modern for Hearthstone. There's an additional twist for this season, which is that all neutrals will be banned. So that means that not only will they not be allowed in deck building, they are removed from the card pool entirely. So discovers will not find them, random effects will not find them. There are no neutral cards in the format at all. We'll talk a little bit in explanations about what that means, because it does do some interesting things. And even though the power level is going to be much higher, it's also going to remove some things that you might have been sick of from the last couple of years. So that's certainly Renathal in particular. If you're a Renathal hater, this might be the format for you. So there will be one very short season from when the patch launches, and which will likely be either next Tuesday or next Thursday, through July 1st. They are saying that it's going to launch in June, so there's only 1 week left in June, so there's not too many days that can come out. And this will be replacing Classic, and I believe Tavern Brawl is replacing Mercenaries on the main menu from what I've seen in the theory crafting event today too. So they're finally doing it. There was a theory crafting. Yeah, it's sad, but it's about time. That should go to modes, I guess. But so there was a theory crafting event today. A number of wild streamers, particularly, were involved in that, and it's still going on now as we're recording it. It seems like a very fun format. Everyone seems to be having fun, so well received, and it'll be just a normal format like Classic was. It's going to have its own ranked ladder. You will be able to build a twist deck and then queue it in casual if you would like to. So it'll behave just like the other formats. So that said, we do unfortunately need to play the economy bumper.
Well, hang on.
Okay.
I think we can talk about how cool this is first.
Okay, let's do
right?
that. Let's do that. Let's talk about how cool it is before we start getting a bummer about it. Yeah, go ahead.
So people have been talking about having a new format for Hearthstone for a long time, whether it's, a modern equivalent or, a play decks from your memory kind of thing. And this is basically, hey, what if all of the above, right? It's kind of a compromise in a way, because it's not any one thing, but I think it's way better because, we saw what happened with Classic, where people were into it for a month, and then it just fell to the wayside, just losing more and more people over time until it was mostly bots. So this having a built-in 1 to 2 months refresher, depending on how long they go with different formats, I think is going to be really nice.
That's really what I'm looking forward to as well. I hear a lot of people talking about how, there's going to be the obvious power outliers, like the Quest Druids. I watched a little bit of the Theorycraft streams today, and I saw Pocket Train go 13-3 with Mozaki Mage. So
Because of course he did.
PTSD is about to come back, honestly.
I mean, that said, Pocket Train could go 13-3 with a ham sandwich. So, especially when he's playing against people who are not tryharding, like I don't think Pocket Train's capable of turning that off. So, I mean, again, it's a it's a theorycraft environment where people are just trying the new things that they're not tryharding. So, but that said, Pocket Train I would believe could go 13-3 with Mozaki Mage and seem to be enjoying himself in the process.
But that questline, Demon Hunter is also looking pretty good. I saw Ali Strazo trying to make a big warrior possible, and it's like the one thing I really like about this format is I think around the time that we're actually going to solve the meta, things are going to reset. And I really feel like, I think I saw this tweet from, I think it was Habu Gabu or something, where it's like, it's not really that impressive to go onto a stat website, look up the best deck in the game, and then master it. I feel like one aspect of Hearthstone that really isn't explored a whole lot is people legitimately making their own decks and trying to either solidify archetypes by themselves without data, or maybe they find something that they end up losing to and they end up trying it, seeing how good it actually is. I think that this is going to be great for experimenting, and that means that for streamers and for content creators in particular, it's just going to invite a lot more creativity, and more people want to see, the good players like the Pocket Trains figure out if Mozaki Mage really is the best deck in the game. But there's going to be a lot of different approaches to this, and by the time that I feel like we really figure it out, everything's just going to get reset.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of people who keep chasing that dragon every year rotation of, like, the wide open meta. And the wide open meta is very rarely as wide open as people think it's going to be. And it's going to... And it ends up not being that long before things get solved. And it may be the same thing here, right? But it's also, like, with a larger card pool, but not as wide open as Wild, where things like... there's kind of a sweet spot with the size of a card pool, where if it gets too big, then you just have too many redundant options, and then you just kind of narrow in on whatever the best things are. And there's big power outliers. I think with like a medium-sized card pool, it's not as limited as it is in Standard, but it's not so big that like there's just clearly degenerate things. There are definitely a bunch of things you can do. We'll talk about those later. And you can kind of relive some of the past of some of the decks that you want. Not everything, obviously, because there's some that rely on neutrals. But also the fact that neutrals are out of it, at least for this initial season, means that it's going to feel different for every class, right? I mean, dual class cards aside, but like one of the things that has been kind of a hallmark, at least of the past like year or so in Standard, is like Renathal, Denathrius, like a lot of the powerful neutrals that, and even going back to like Kazakhstan, right? That dominated the meta and then got, and even like not necessarily like the powerful legendaries, but things like School Teacher and Nerubian Vizier that you just see a lot of. And this will kind of force those classes into having unique identities and not relying on a neutral that you've seen over and over again. So I think that'll be a little bit fresher from that perspective too.
Kind of reminds me of a certain tournament that that we had last week.
You'll get your time. Don't worry, we'll get there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm not sure stuff like the Discovers would have been used too much anyway, just because with so many cards, I think you do sort of naturally gravitate more to class cards because class cards tend to be higher quality in overall. But there are crucial things like if you were wanting to do Il'gynoth combo, Demon Hunter doesn't have any spell damage cards. So they had to use like Talented Arcanist or Silvermoon Arcanist or something like that to get the spell damage. So that kind of Il'gynoth combo is kind of off the table. Now, there are ways of giving your hero lifesteal. So you could do like a more weapon focused thing with the new minion that gives your hero lifesteal that only costs 2. You could do that. Of course, you could also just have Eldraki Warblades equipped. People are experimenting with all kinds of different aggro decks. But there are, certain things where there were key neutrals that just aren't going to be available anymore. And so, curious how a lot of that plays out. I think a lot of tribal stuff often uses neutrals as well. So I think there are certain ones where if enough of the minion type is within that class, like you'll still be able to do it, and it may even be just like really powerful because it is so focused. Like Kibler was trying Imp Warlock because a lot of the imps just already were in Warlock, and so you can do that with the recent fatigue stuff, and it's pretty powerful.
But
But
something like Naga Priest would probably be a lot harder because that relies on a lot of
yeah,
the neutral Nagas. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Versus like maybe like Murloc Warlock is actually really good because they had a lot of Murloc support all in like one set. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of
Uh-huh.
the early games, so there might be a way to like kind of like combine archetypes and whatnot. But this is something that I really do enjoy is that we're already talking about cards we are literally like cards that almost never saw play. And this is the kind of thing that I value in a new game mode where it's like it's not necessarily about the new rule set, but we're going to be able to mess with cards that maybe were pretty good, but just in standard just didn't have a chance of actually seeing play.
Yeah. Yeah, either because there were neutrals that were better or because there were decks that were just invalidating them. Like, there will still be some powerful decks that we remember or versions of them, but not necessarily all of those decks that were available over those years. And we're also getting just sets that have never existed together, you know, in a standard year. Like, we never had Ashes of Outland with Festival of Legends, right?
Mhm.
So, like, we have, like, Day 1 Demon Hunter cards with everything that's in Demon Hunter to be able to make like Relic Demon Hunter or, you know, or Big Demon Hunter a thing. Like Big Demon Hunter could be interesting to build with all of the old big demons that we never got to play before like Fellscale Evoker actually became a viable option. For example, I'm not saying it's good enough, but it's something that if you wanted to make Big Demon Hunter a thing, you could try it, and you have other options to make that a little bit more interesting to you.
And then you have the opposite side where what about Death Knight? How is Death Knight even going to be able to survive in a metagame like this? Because they literally have like what, a third of the cards, and then they also have rune requirements that make it even more difficult to build a deck. Like I think that Death Knight is going to need some kind of help if it's going to see play, or who knows, maybe Frost DK is actually just the nuts and Frostworm Fury is just a card that should go to 8 mana. Not actually saying that, by the way, but a lot of people have that sentiment. But regardless, there's just a lot of what ifs that we just don't know the answer to yet. And that's what I'm most looking forward to, is us figuring out what's actually going to be good, because I think that collecting data on this is going to be a little bit challenging. Like I've heard some websites may not even do anything with Twist because of how often they're going to have to change like something within their coding or whatever. So gathering data on this may not be that popular, and people are going to quickly notice, oh wait, I don't have data to go by, so I really got to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that was Stonekeep from Hearthstone Hearthstone Top Decks was saying that he wasn't going to build a Twist specific filter for his deck builder, because it's a fair amount of work to get that implemented for each format, and then if he's going to have to change it every month or two, then that's going to be difficult. I would imagine HS Replay and Firestone will be fine. Like HS Replay is just tracking. It doesn't really care about, you know, like what's available to build. It doesn't have to change much. It just has to like filter it by whatever the format is, which is going to be listed in the deck code anyway. So that might be a little bit easier, but it did also take them until last week to have support for, you know, the cards that were in ETC. So who knows?
Yeah, and you know, I was also thinking about, and maybe you can speak more to this because you're more of a Wild player than I am, Clark. But oftentimes when I do venture into Wild and I look at like a meta report or something, there may be some clear like tier 1, but I almost feel like the tier 2 and tier 3, like there's just so many possibilities. And I feel like we could have something similar with Twist, where maybe people find what's, you know, some of the best stuff, because there's something broken. Although they've said they will be willing to do bans. They're not going to do balance for Twist, but they are going to do bans because it doesn't make sense to like change cards for something that's going to go away in a month or two anyways. In which case, if they're doing bans, like that will kill certain decks. So, but yeah, we really could have some very big like tier 2s or tier 3s. And often what I find is, you know, if you're just going there to have a good time, like you can just play what you want and be creative and like face a lot of different sorts of stuff. It's not really until you get to like the really higher ranks that you'll be facing like a true meta.
Yeah, and I feel like I can easily make this prediction. This is probably not that hot of a take, but I imagine some of the quest lines are just going to get banned from the format if they're as problematic as a lot of people are assuming. And that's honestly just like kind of an easy fix. I mean, you get rid of the one card, and then suddenly that puts an entire archetype on its head. So you really have to start thinking outside the box again. But there's also the issues that I have with quest lines, just how streamlined a lot of them are. Especially like the Demon Hunter quest line, for example. That drawing cards is so simple. Like, and Demon Hunter has like the best card draw in the entire game. So,
yeah, and I mean, a lot of the quests are just going to be. I mean, you kind of need the quest for like the first week to give people kind of a starting point, you know, because like it's overwhelming trying to figure out. Like, I think there, you know, we have some things that we've thought about already and that you could do, but like. It's kind of overwhelming, and it is, if somebody just wants to get started, being able to just say, okay, well, I know how the quest works. I know what the cards are that the quest uses. Let's see what I can do with that, right? And, you know, update, like, a quest mage or a quest, you know, a quest warlock or whatever. And maybe somebody can make quest paladin work, you know? Maybe that's a thing. But, you know. I mean, we have, you know, sous chef now, like, where we didn't have that when that quest was in standard. So maybe that...
ooh.
Well, I guess it did. I guess it was there last year, right? It was there. It was in at the same time last year.
Look, I've tried Quest Pally at like every point during its standard run. It's just the fundamental problem of you have to play it turn one instead of a one drop is pretty tough to overcome.
Not to mention the rewards really not all too rewarding.
Yeah, like there was a time in Hearthstone where that would have been like really good, you know, where because Baku Dude Paladin like would go up against the control decks and just outgas them because they couldn't clear every single board. But we hit a point where control decks were able to like flip boards better or like be able to end games, and so you can't as easily like expect to get there by just refilling and forcing a clear every turn.
Yeah. Baku Du Paladin also had level up. That helped a little bit.
Yeah.
At least for some of the time.
I mean the quest reward is built in, right? It gives them +2/+2. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess we should discuss the elephant in the room, which is that this is a format that is going to require you to have a deeper collection in order to get full enjoyment out of it than otherwise would have been the case if you are the kind of person who is just, you know, as soon as rotation happens, you go into your collection, go into every set and dust every card. You're going to have some catching up to do, and that's not going to be easy. There will be battle ready decks available to purchase for gold in addition to for money. So that will help, and we haven't seen those. I guess we have seen those because those are the ones that are in the client that some of the players are using in the theory crafting stream, and they seem like, from what I understand, they're legit. But you also, if you had gold to spare, you probably weren't dusting all your wild cards. So that is going to be a concern. There may be some people who feel a little bit left out of this first season. They have said that not all of the twist seasons will have this kind of a card requirement. Some of them may be standard with some sort of a you know, a different take on it, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. But I guess this is kind of might also change the way that you approach your collection going forward. Because knowing that twist is a thing, if that's something you want to participate in, then that's something you're probably not going to want to do is go ahead and dust your entire collection just to be able to play standard. I mean, I will say I've put guides out every year since year of the mammoth on like what to dust to target like the really bad cards and get some of the, you know, get dust without having to blow everything away. But, you know, I understand, first of all, not everybody knows that was there, and also like it doesn't matter if you are completely free to play, and you need that dust in order to play standard. So that's something that it's something that if you really want to participate in it, I'm sure that there will be some budget decks. Like there will probably be some standard decks that, like Pure Paladin, you probably can just play, right? Like you could probably just play Pure Paladin with, a couple of additions that are probably not that expensive and get there. You may have to put some money in if you want to participate in this. And that's just going to be a decision everyone's going to have to make. But it seems like Team 5 is doing what they can to try to keep this from being too much of a barrier, also understanding that Blizzard is a business at the end of the day, that they're going to they're expecting to make money on cards at a certain point. But it doesn't feel like they're doing this to sell old cards. It feels like this is something that they're trying to do to give people a way to feel like their cards are more valuable, so that they won't just dust them at a rotation.
And that's something that I really want to like kind of hit on, is because we have heard from some of the game designers that, first of all, we don't know exactly what these changes are going to be, but there's some changes that are coming to the Wild format. And they've been like trying to tell us, like, especially at the beginning of this new year, don't dust your cards. We got some cool stuff planned. So This is a really important thing to keep in mind, especially with how Twist is going to work, because if Standard does become, like a new rule set or whatever, it does make it available to more players. And it's kind of funny because this is a conversation that's already been had, especially on some circles of Twitter. But we might see an introduction of like a monthly subscription service or something.
Oh yeah, there was
where
that
it's
survey
like
a few months ago.
Yeah, and it's like, what if instead of doing like, having all the cards available for Standard, it was just all available for Twist? Maybe they do it for each individual format or something. But I feel like in Twist in particular, I could see people actually buying something like that and doing like a monthly, at least I have all the cards, because a lot of people don't really care about Wild, unfortunately. And I love what Wild provides, but some people just, they don't want all of that stuff, and that's perfectly fair. But this is a perfect way to kind of help people get those kind of collections. And I've already seen on my last video, one person is like, I am going on every single YouTube channel that I know and leaving this comment, Blizzard, you got to do this because it'll be a great way to make money. And well, that's one way to get Blizzard's attention. But another way to get their attention is, hey, people are actually going to want this because of, how inaccessible Wild has been to a lot of people. So I think that it has a lot of potential, but at the same time, I wish we didn't have to use it, but that's just, perfect world situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to highlight a couple things we pulled here from Twitter. So, Gaeyuan, who I mentioned the mage deck earlier, says this mode is way too unfriendly for China players, even more than Wild mode, with a lot of crying emojis, which I totally get. Trying to make do with their server being killed, and already they're building a second collection. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can expect to be.
I mean, it would be great if your collection would transfer across servers, right? Like that.
Yes.
I mean, they're not going to do that, but like if their collections transferred across servers, like that would be a lot less of a concern. But unfortunately, that's not the way that it works, and they did have to basically start over from scratch. So that's a fair criticism, yeah.
And then Tic Tac, your boy from all the Control Priest and Mage decks. Without wanting to sound negative, I have a hard time seeing this mode be that played or popular. A lot of players don't have access to old cards anymore. This just feels like Wild 2.0. And this is where I feel like with some of the discussion we just had and going to continue, I kind of disagree. Because I feel like there's a pretty substantial number of players who have, started playing more recently, who noped out of Wild stuff because they haven't been playing since the beginning, but have been holding on to their cards because they're just attached or just in case, right? I think there are a number of, sort of even for myself, I have been playing since the beginning, but I don't really play Wild. I still have held onto the cards in the hopes of, well, maybe they'll do something. And maybe I will want those. And over time, there's been stuff like duels. I mean, duels has already been the thing where it's like you get to take advantage of the fact that you have cards from older sets. And I think people don't always remember or talk about that because it's not a premium game mode, we'll say. But I think that plenty of folks have been keeping the cards for duels or just sort of just in case since they started playing. And also, we only know one twist format, right? Like, we know there's one twist format that is new age that is going to be 2 months, and then they'll figure out the next one. There may be some twist formats that are literally like standard collection, but with some other weird restriction, right? Yeah. Maybe it's standard collection, but like you're trying to be the first to hit 0 or something weird, right? Like there've been some of these challenge a friend type modes that we've done before that maybe they'll make into one of the monthly things. I don't know that they would do something as polarizing as the intentionally get to 0, because like certain classes just do that better.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
to kind of reflect that sentiment, I think this was a statistic that was posted like back in like 2020, but Hearthstone had the most amount of legend players reach they had the most amount of legend players in 2020, and that was, I believe, when Skullman's Academy was a thing. So I could totally understand, like, there's a lot of players that have been holding onto their collections for a while, waiting for something like this to emerge. So I feel like, I mean, the other thing about Wild in particular that makes it harder to get into is if you're not familiar with like what's going on at the top level, and you just want to, like, say for example, you just want to play Murloc Paladin or Anyfin Paladin because it was your favorite deck and you happen to hit rank 1 legend with it. So you go back, you make that deck, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, just to use Questline Druid as an example because it's the best deck right now. Oh wait, there's Questline Druid, and now this is a really expensive deck with a few amount of legendaries. I don't know exactly how much dust it is, but just using it as an example. And then you're like, oh wait, now I have to get that deck if I actually want to climb in Wild. And I feel like this is also like a thing that a lot of people do, where it's like, if they're not winning every other game sort of thing, they think the deck is bad. You don't necessarily have to go for the top of the ranks every single time. You can just kind of like figure out how good your deck is. But at the same time, if it doesn't perform well, then you immediately want to give up on it. So it's a little bit of a give and take on that situation. But I think that there's a lot of untapped potential with this, and being able to change the rule sets. We can have like one event that isn't necessarily easy for everybody, but then the next event is going to be very good for everybody.
Yeah. And like, I appreciate that there are going to be some people who are locked out of this, and it sucks, right? Like, that absolutely is the case. I think making a blanket statement like this mode is not going to be good because people are going to, not have the collections for it. Like, the fact that Marvel Snap exists is the complete counter argument to that line of discussion, because like, if it is a fun mode, people will put money into it, and they'll build up a collection, or they'll dust some things and they'll craft cards from those sets instead of crafting stuff from standard. Like, I don't think that, people not having the collections right now is going to be a barrier to entry. And I think it's the point about 2020 is appropriate, because like, the other thing that they're doing is targeting returning players. So a returning player may not have dusted everything. They may have just dropped off, right? Mm-hmm. And they may need to get some cards to get up to speed with the current stuff, but they may have all those cards from, 2-3 years ago. And then this is another way for them to use it. And I'm sure that there were some people who got into Hearthstone, as the pandemic started, and then, their cards rotated and they just dropped out. And now, well, your cards are still good. So I think there's
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say that, reflecting the Marvel Snap sentiment, like, I literally just hit Infinite for the very first time this month, and I have not spent a single penny on the game. I'm 100% free to play with Marvel Snap, and the reason why I keep playing it is because I honestly enjoy the gameplay. It's so like well designed from like a gameplay standpoint that I just love. And I've got like Galactus and Thanos, so I have some of the cool cards. But it's you will find a way to enjoy the game if you do put those kind of limitations on yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're playing more because you're enjoying it, then you will, you'll earn gold, you'll earn XP, you'll earn gold, and then you'll get, you'll just have to figure out a different strategy for card acquisition. So, I think, I mean, I'm excited about it. Obviously, I have the card, so it's, easier for me to be excited about it. But I think that this is one of the coolest things that they've done in a while. And I think that this is a great way to shake up the format and give you something to do in the client when the other formats are not appealing to you, right? Like we were just talking about how standard is starting to get a little long in the tooth, or there's things about it that sometimes you don't like. I mean, I've been playing less off stream than I do normally. But I'm excited for Twist. I think Twist will be different, and being able to go to a different mode that's not just like Wild with all the baggage that's there in Wild, that just doesn't really change a lot. Like having a new challenge to address, and a different meta, and a meta that's going to be changing. I think that's really positive, and I think it's really cool that they're doing it.
And bottom line, Classic was rotting. Like it was. I'm sorry for people that were enjoying and playing Classic, but I feel like even you stopped when it just became a place for bots, because bots didn't need a collection to just be on there farming gold, XP, whatever. So they kind of needed to deal with the Classic situation, and just getting rid of it for this new thing that the people had been asking for, a new way to play the game for a while. I think this is, just going to be net good, even if people have to, maybe work a bit for those cards.
And it's like one more point that I want to like kind of drive home when it comes to like the new game, like the new game modes in Hearthstone. So if we take a look at the last 3 game modes, there was duels, there was mercenaries, and then there was I'm forgetting. I think battlegrounds. But it's like the thing that's really important to keep in mind here is that this is Hearthstone at the end of the day. We don't have to learn a whole new mechanic. We don't have to learn a new way of like learning the gold. I was saying this on my stream, but it's like I can easily explain what Twist is to someone who is just barely familiar with Hearthstone. It's like, hey, it's Hearthstone, but with a twist. What's the twist? No neutral cards. Boom. You know everything you need to know about it outside of, like the card pools that are in it. But it's super easy to explain. It's super easy to understand. And the barrier of entry is there. But again, this isn't like you're learning a whole new game mode like with mercenaries or with duels or with battlegrounds. This is just Hearthstone at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a different way to play with your cards, which is what people have been asking for. So
for years.
Yeah, for a long time. So yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, before we spend years on this show,
we have
finish up the news.
Yeah, there is one other news story that's there. Speaking of subscription services like Game Pass, Microsoft has hit another snag. We're not covering every twist and turn in this saga, but this seemed like it was a pretty significant one, that the FTC blocked the Activision Blizzard deal a couple weeks ago, and so Microsoft has just put in a filing ahead of a trial that they're going to have to appeal the ruling, and is actually like admitting that they've lost the console wars. It's a pretty interesting article. We'll link it in the show notes, but they're pretty much falling on their sword and saying like this is the reason that they're doing this merger is not because they want to get Call of Duty exclusivity or whatever. It's because they're in third place by a large margin in the console wars, and this is a way for them to catch up. So, and the reason that this is kind of, I do wonder if, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but there's probably some sort of a thought that like Game Pass would be a thing by now, and I'm sure that there's been some thoughts around like how do you incorporate something like Hearthstone into Game Pass, like for whenever that happens, right? And this might have been something, that might have hoped to be timed around that to be able to, make that, because that a subscription service like you're talking about, like Game Pass is that, right? So if they were thinking that maybe they put the, the non-standard sets into like a Game Pass subscription and then make those available. Because I mean, if you look at what Riot did with like League of Legends and Wild Rift, like you just get all the champions, right? So that might have been something that they were thinking about, and this would be a way to use those. And I don't know anything. I'm just kind of speculating, but it's interesting to think about. So, but that's it for news. But we have some tournament news, and we have just the right people to talk about this tournament. So why don't we move into that?
It's the grand tournament.
I love these sound effects, by the way.
It's been one of the great pleasures of taking over the stream is getting to press the button. I'll tell you that much. But we did have the Hellscream Cup named after one ClarkHELLSCREAM that took place this weekend, casted by our own Edelweiss. And since I was the only one who was not part of this event because I was busy driving people around all weekend or at work on Friday, so I will turn it over to the both of you to talk about the event and how Ragnaros came to almost carry the day.
I ended up hosting my own tournament, which is something that I've been wanting to do forever. I just didn't know how to actually do everything behind the scenes, gather production, gather. I essentially did all of the behind the scenes work with the help of with Edelweiss, with Rabobson helped me out with the band list. And First Night of Me is by far one of the best people that you can ask to do Hearthstone production tournaments. I was completely blown away with how professional everything looked. But the whole point of the tournament was standard, but we take out some problematic cards that, just think of a card that you would see on Ladder. It doesn't exist anymore. We literally banned 50 cards. And it sounds like a lot, but the justification at the end of the day is that since there are 11 classes in the game, each class was essentially having 10 to 14 cards banned, depending on how insane of a swing the cards have. So case in point, right. Cards that are you draw them and you automatically win the game. Cards like Marigar, the Countess, Death Blossom, Womper, all of those cards were not allowed in this tournament. And the whole point was to try and essentially put content creators in a position to where they have to think about these different strategies they never thought about. And the real kicker is that nobody except me knew what the band list was until it was time to start building decks. They had an hour to build a lineup based on this band list. There was 5 rounds of Swiss, and top 4 got seeded into a single elimination bracket. And Edelweiss, how would you like to describe your experience with the event? Because you not only got to cast it, but you got to see the behind the scenes as well as building your own lineup beforehand.
Yeah, so it was an interesting challenge. I think had I been participating instead of casting, it would have been a bit of a struggle for me to build the decks within the time limit, because it's almost like a rush to figure out, okay, what are 4 viable things I can put together. There's not a ton of time to actually put together a fully fleshed strategy of okay, well, I think people will go for this because that's obvious. Let me build this other thing. You're on the clock. So it was pretty tough. I came up with a few things that I liked. Not a whole lot that was necessarily similar to some of what people actually did, but it was interesting just to see what directions people went. Honestly, we maybe even could have banned a couple more cards. We did go a little conservative with some of the classes because, there's certain things where it's the way you described the vision was well, I want people to be able to play the thing, but just without some of the key stuff. And so when it came to something like Relic DH, we were a little worried that if we did something like take out one of the actual relics, that might hit it too much. Turns out maybe that was necessary to take it off the board. We thought that hitting Nerubian Vizier and School Teacher would be enough, along with Silvermoon Arcanist. But our winner still brought it with Enchanter instead of Silvermoon Arcanist, and it was good enough to get there. But it was just a really great time to see what people came up with in terms of these soft meta decks, and then also a lot of people brought Paladin, going a mech Paladin route, but it didn't necessarily perform that well. And I think that's something that's really great to get to watch play out, is sometimes there's stuff that people sort of converge on because it's easy and it looks good, but then when it comes down to it, like it's still predictable in its play patterns, etc., and so isn't necessarily the performing thing. Or but maybe it still draws bans or whatever. Like it was really cool to see kind of everyone's strategy and the way it all played out, and a couple of pretty highlight decks.
And one thing that I really liked about this tournament was, like, especially with Hearthstone esports, when you see someone lose, they are just mauling. They're upset because there's so much on the line. And this might have had to do more with the fact that this was more of a, a casual tournament. There was money to be won, but obviously, no, not world championship, not world championship type of money. But people were laughing at games they were losing. Like, people were legitimately having fun with this kind of thing. And this is why I am absolutely hyped about Twist, is because sometimes in order to enjoy Hearthstone, you just got to get rid of the really problematic cards that swing things a whole lot. And you can remember, oh, wait, I just don't like top 1000 legend meta. I still like Hearthstone. I still like these cards. And there's lots of ways to be able to enjoy the game. But if you're just playing ranked all the time, it's really easy to feel like you've just hit a wall because you're seeing the same things over and over again. So that was one thing that I really tried to challenge myself with this tournament, was to try and, make people enjoy the game in a different way that maybe they just didn't consider. And I can say that this was probably the most proud achievement that I've ever done within Hearthstone content creation. And there's going to be another one. I think I could safely say there's going to be another tournament. I'm meeting with some people next week to talk with sponsors. And I'm really hoping that this can be like, a monthly thing that I can do, granted I have the resources to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you from watching it, it felt like watching competitive Commander. And like just
is that a compliment?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean,
I
like,
have no reference.
yeah, like like Commander decks that are just like trying to do the sweet thing, right? Like they're trying to win, but they're trying to do it with style. I mean, like Linny's all rag lineup, right? Like just became the one to root for, just because like you wanted to see Ragnaros close out a game, and it did eventually. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that you're not going to see. I mean, she plays Rag in every deck anyway, but then her being able to do that and bring that to a competitive environment it was really cool to watch. And like a lot of what happens in like the esports events is you just see the same matchups, and like especially when there's a lot of polarity in the meta, and like how that matchup's typically going to go. Like you might see something really cool like flip the matchup when you have like a 70-30 matchup, but you kind of know how those matchups are going to go. And then you're just kind of waiting for those games to play out so you can get to the game 5 where whatever the two decks that lost twice are somebody's going to have to figure out a way to win. But like here it was like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be pretty cool. Right. And that seemed like it was kind of fresh and interesting. And I really appreciated that about how the event turned out.
And one thing to point out, I'm pretty sure this is true. There may have been like one game where this happened, but there was almost like no full sweeps. Like everybody was able to at least go to like a game 4 during 5 rounds of Swiss. And that really says a lot about how people were, first of all, building their decks. Second of all, how these kind of decks would perform, because there wasn't an obvious answer. Like I went for Big Warrior Naga Mage, which didn't have Frozen Touch, so it was just missing one of its key pieces. And I'll tell you right now, the deck just did not work. But then there was Big Shaman. Big Shaman was like almost like a sleeper. And I didn't bring this, unfortunately, but Odemian also brought Big Shaman and had a Glug in it with Mask Revelers. So there was a lot of like little synergies that were definitely there. And if players knew how to take advantage of them, then obviously you would do very well in this kind of tournament. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I love to reward, is good deck building and good planning.
And creativity, right? Like just
Especially,
like being able to think outside the box and like figure out a way to put things together and make them work. Like it seemed like that. I mean, you had to be kind of creative on the fly in order to be successful in this event.
Yeah, and something else that I'm happy, but also not happy that I didn't make the top 4. Like I've never made a top cutoff in my life, but it's funny because I started 0-2, but then I won out the rest of my series, so I ended 3-2, which was the cutoff you needed for top 4. but it would have been weird if I was in the top 4. So I'm glad it didn't work out that way. And we had Rami, Lin, Odemian, and Jombre in our top 4. So we had a lot of really good players that were, that people were hyped to see them perform. Like, I'm just really happy with how the entire event ended up.
Yeah, it's not the sort of traditional setting that you get to see some of those players in. Odemian coming off of the Solary LAN party the weekend before, being the winner of that. Jombre we always know for making wacky decks. Lenny, not a typical, big tournament competitor, but she was holding her own. She took down Odemian with this great rag shot moment. So if you haven't checked this out, definitely go look at the VODs. Clark put a link to his recap of the Hellscream Cup. It was just a huge blast. I kind of think if you want to get some of the same feeling with doing Twist, you may have to do it where your tournament comes the weekend after whatever the new format is, so that you get that sort of minimal time for people to try and figure things out.
Yeah, you don't want it in a settled meta. You want it to be as much as fresh as possible. Though I guess the only downside of this Twist meta is that you're not going to be able to play Rag in any of your decks. So, I don't know if it's even worth running an event.
Yeah, Shaman has Jive
Oh, yeah.
Insect.
That's right. You have Jive Insect. Okay, never mind. I stand corrected.
And one other thing I feel like you'll enjoy about this Wicked Good is that Rami actually brought, the winner of the tournament actually brought a Control Priest.
Yeah, I did see that.
Control Priest was viable.
Yeah, I remember the conversation about whether the deliberation about whether to ban Cathedral or not. And
yes,
that you were afraid that if you ban Cathedral, the priest just wouldn't have enough to be able to get there. And not sure if that would have been true or not. I mean, Rami's a very good control player. It's a joy to see him playing Hearthstone again. It really is. I really one of the things, I really enjoyed the last couple of years in Grandmasters watching him specifically. Especially with his arc from barely not getting relegated into winning, coming in at the top of the bracket, and that transformation that he went through. And I remember watching him playing some of these control decks, and he was really masterful at it. So it was really cool to see him kind of take a control deck in an environment where you don't really want to play a control deck because you don't know what the hell you're going to be facing and what you should be teching against, and being able to pilot that to a win was really cool to see.
And one more deck that I want to give a shout out to was the Gyminator's Tempo Overheal Hadonis OTK Priest. There was so much going on in that deck that I was just happy to witness such a beautiful amalgamation of cards work together. But the key part of the deck that was really cool was Hadonis into Cover Artist to make another Hadonis, which makes a 3/3, perfectly healed version of the card, so you can immediately start casting healing cards on it, and then it would deal some damage. And it was just that is exactly the kind of thing I wanted to see in this type of event, where it's Overheal Priest has been getting a lot of flack for being not that good for a new keyword that was just introduced. A lot of people just haven't experimented with the archetype, but he made it work. He literally beat Rami, and I think Rami only had that one loss on his record, and of course it had to go to the Overheal Hadonis OTK Priest.
Well, I mean, it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's not going to beat the top meta decks in Standard, right? And it's something that also they said is going to get. It's going to get support, right? It's going to get support throughout the rest of the Standard year. If it's not there right now, it may be not intended to be, right? It's kind of giving you an idea of what's there. But I mean, when you bring the overall power level of the meta down, then it can get there. So it was a cool event. We're looking forward to seeing more. And but speaking of deck building and creativity, why don't we talk about what the hell we're going to do when Twist starts up next week?
I have honestly haven't really thought about it.
So this first version of Twist is going to be Ashes of Outland through current Standard with no neutrals. So we mentioned how that eliminates certain things like spell damage, which means you can't do Il'gynoth OTK and Demon Hunter. Obviously you aren't going to be seeing any Renathal decks or no Astalor. So a lot of these common neutrals, no Magathas that people might otherwise be looking to are just not going to be present. And almost more importantly, that means that like you just can't do some of the build arounds you're used to from old cards as well. You got all the old gods, not there. Those were obviously very present for Dark Moon Fair. Kazakusan, which is a card we definitely saw a lot of, not going to be there. Lady Prestor, Silas Dark Moon, Elwyn Boar, thank God.
I'd like to know why we put this one on the list.
I mean, this meta will be a lot of things, but it will not be boring.
Yeah. But then, the whole like Discover pools are not going to have neutral cards either. I mean, that is just pretty massive when it comes to all the studies.
Yeah. And that was part of the reason why I feel like Mozaki was really, really impressive, is because you can always find the Imprisoned Phoenix in order to set up an OTK. Ashwin, maybe not as powerful in that particular deck, but just the consistency that you can get off of Discover now is maybe going to drive some archetypes over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, and like Shaman's Primordial Studies pool is even smaller. It's just Vosh, Novice Zapper, and Imprisoned Phoenix. If you're playing a Quest Shaman where you need overload cards, you could just put 2 more Novice Zappers in your deck, right? By running Primordial Studies. And if you really want to go all in, I don't know how you make it work, but Drakefire Amulet only summons Hala. So if you can figure it out, it's you only have Belinda, you don't have Barbaric Sorceress, because Barbaric Sorceress is a neutral if you want to play big Spell Mage. But if you can figure out a way to consistently get a Drakefire Amulet with enough mana to be able to cast spells, then you might be able to make something happen.
I have an idea, actually. We were talking about that remix bot card, right? The 3/3. So you get a bunch of coins from that.
Yeah.
You play Belinda, you play it for 5 mana, and then you play a lot of the coins. And you could potentially, obviously the perfect list is going to be a little bit hard to make, because Belinda drawing specific spells is something to keep in mind. But like maybe you end up playing like Incanter's Flow and discounting a whole bunch of spells, so that way when you do the Hull turn, you have a bunch of 0 mana cards available. But I mean, just like that, we're already thinking about how this could legitimately be a thing. Like,
yeah. And I mean, there are a number, like, that's one of the big side effects of removing all the neutrals, is that some of the Discovery pools are going to be very small, and there are probably ways to abuse some of them. Like, Harmonic Disco summons a 5-cost Paladin minion. I don't know how many 5-cost Paladin minions there are, but there can't be that many of them, right? So, or it's like either a 1-cost or a 5-cost, it flips, right? It's like, it's Discover a 1-cost and give it +5/+5, or a 5-cost and give it +1/+1. So I don't know how many there are, but there can't be that many. Nelly is a card that's going to get a much smaller pirate pool, because it's only going to have the warrior pirates. And if you want to play Glaciate, it's a big if, but there are only 3 8-cost Shaman minions, which are Alakir, Torghast Custodian, and Blightblood Berserker. Don't ask me what those last 2 are.
Huge.
Yeah. 2 of those are great.
Yeah. So and it's a Discover, so you always get to choose whichever one you want.
Right. Do you want Charge or do you want Healing?
Right.
Well,
I mean, it's going.
It won't. Right. Like the Berserker just feels like the pick every single time, because you just want to get that thing on the field, and then I mean, that's an obvious choice.
Yeah. So it's something that you may not put that in your deck, but you may discover it from something, right? I don't know what Shaman what Shaman has to discover spells, but I'm sure it has something. So that's something that you can do. Yeah, I mean, I guess Druid gets 8-cost spells off of, oh god, what was the? Didn't it have something that gives you like a random, or maybe that's not in the pool. I don't remember.
You're thinking of Centaurian Toll or something like it summons a random 8-drop. So
there's
the card that I mean, they're random 8-drops, so it could be any class 8-drop, I think. It won't pull
Right.
any of the neutrals, but you have a lot of the high roll cards, like the 4/9 that summons a 4/2 with every spell you play.
Yeah.
There's Troublemaker, that summons 2 3/3s that attack immediately. There's a lot of high rolls that you can get off a Centurion Ward. That's what it's called. Cenarian Ward.
Yeah. That's what the one that get 8 armor and summon a random 8-drop. That's what it was. Yeah. So, and you're gonna have a little bit. So the things you might have a little bit more trouble with are you're not gonna be able to play Garrett Rogue because you don't have any of the most of the battle cries that you care about are neutral. Like we talked about OTK Demon Hunter because Moarg Artificer and Enchanter are both not there. Battleground Battlemaster will make Charge Warrior pretty difficult because you don't get the Wind Fury. Goldshire Nolan, whatever you're abusing it in, any Evolved Shaman or whatever it happens to be. We talked about Big Spell Mage. Any of the Flesh Behemoth shenanigans are going to be difficult, and then there's no Bran. Well, Bran's out of core anyway. So I guess the one thing that we didn't mention when we were talking about the sets is that it's the expansions as they were, and then core as it is right now. So, it's not going back to the classic set. The classic set is a completely separate card set that's only for classic, which means it's just I don't know what you even do with it now, but whatever. I think you can play them. You can play those in Wild, but that the classic set's not available for Twist. And the unnerfed versions of the cards were put into a special classic set, so there were different cards in your collection for you wouldn't see them, but when you went into classic, you actually get a different copy of the card that you were playing with. So that's how they were doing the unnerfed versions of the cards. They're not doing it for Twist. So whatever the current state of the card, based on whatever it's been nerfed or buffed or whatever, that is the card that you're playing with. Not any unnerfed versions or anything like that.
And one thing to kind of keep in mind, since we were talking about neutral cards that won't be available. Now, this is just me looking off the notes, so thank you for putting this here. Tech cards in particular, for example, Paladin ClarkHELL is available in the game. You don't have weapon removal now. You don't have Viper to get rid of the half damage. Yep. So disruption tools that have been kind of necessary to beat certain matchups. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how ClarkHELL performs in particular, because I mean you're never going to not take half damage now. And just today I saw I think it was, I don't know who was on the Solari account, but they literally had the count. They were playing pure Paladin. They played the Countess, and then they found Mal'Ganis. So it's just not only are you not taking any more damage, but it's just the double stack is just hilarious.
Yeah, and Dirty Rat's not there, Theotar's not there, Plague Spreader's not there. Those are all neutral. So any sort of hand disruption. I posted a Quest Priest on Twitter with the comment, "I already ruined Twist. I'm sorry, not sorry." And I did get a comment "Oh, right. Nobody can do anything to kick the quest reward out of your hand anymore." Even just any of the quests, it used to be that you would not finish the quest until you could play the reward that turn. And I think it's just Savory Deviate Delight, or if you really high roll Harvester of Envy, that you can really disrupt your opponent's hand. So and Harvester of Envy, you'd have to somehow get the card out of their hand that turn and play Harvester of Envy and have enough mana to be able to play the quest reward, and good luck. I don't know how that's gonna work anyway.
Yeah, I saw someone playing Weapon Rogue against Kibler. Well, what was the thing we did against that? We played Vipers, right? Can't do that. And fortunately, that is one they didn't revert the nerf on, the concealment or whatever, where they
Cloak of Shadows.
Cloak of Shadows. Yeah. That so that's
still
cost
4 mana.
4.
Yeah, thankfully.
But it's Kibler got him down to 1, couldn't find the crescendo, and they got there because it was just a sharpening sword and a lot of burn. And they've got more weapon buff stuff with mic drop and the harmonic or dissonant card for Rogue. So that on top of some of the previous poisons and things is a little spooky.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the things that you would use to get through stealth are like Denathrius and Astalor, right? Not options, right? Because you're doing random damage. That's stuff that could hit face. Like, you would need to use, like, you know,
Light
AoE.
show.
Yeah, like Light Show or Hellfire or something that does, you know, AoE damage that also hits face, like Consecration, like that sort of thing you would have to do. But there's not a lot of that anymore, and a lot of the things that you would commonly do for that is neutral.
Yeah. A few other staples that are gone. Multicaster was previously a very big draw engine for certain classes. That's gone. Amalgam of the Deep, Vizier and School Teacher, Onyx Mage Scribe, Wand Maker, and Scorpid, which have all been big discoveries at certain points. The Watch Posts are gone. Raid Boss Onyxia, and Penflinger. So if you're thinking about Libram Paladin, it's not going to be a Penflinger Libram Paladin.
I don't know if I can play this format without Ellenborn Pinflinger. This is just going up against everything I've ever been told and I've ever been taught in Hearthstone.
Or Animated Broomstick.
Oh man, can't forget about Broom, dude. I mean, we have Dance Floor now in Paladin.
Yeah, you have the
that's
location, so you don't actually need Broomstick
yeah.
in that in Paladin specifically. And you can play that in Pure Paladin if you want to.
It's true.
I'm really concerned about Pure Paladin, man. Like, it's already like one of the best decks in the game, and now there's literally a format where it literally isn't losing anything because it doesn't play neutrals to begin with.
Right.
So it's gonna be really interesting to see how this kind of metagame breaks through. But I think that Pure Paladin's probably gonna have, you know, a run from its money because of the consistency of Discover.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of the decks that are still viable, like, a lot of the quests are going to be viable. It's the other thing we've been talking about. Like, Quest Mage is just spells; those are all class cards. Quest Shaman is play Overload; those are all class cards. I was able to build a Quest Priest. It's not, I don't know how good it is, but it didn't seem particularly hard with, you know, what we had available, and it certainly got some better options now than it did when I was building it. It's 30 cards, so it's a little bit harder to fit everything in, but you still can. Quest Warrior will probably be a bit of a challenge, just because, like, a lot of the pirates are neutrals. But you do have a wider... Ankar is one of the... that was Dead Mines, right?
That's a really good question.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because I want to say it was...
Descent of Dragons.
No.
Oh, that was Descent of Dragons. Okay,
so it's
good.
too old.
Yeah.
All right, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like we had that recently.
Yeah, so, I mean, you'd have Nelly, but then you have to get everything out of Nelly. That's a little bit slow. So Pirate Warrior might not have a chance. Quest Paladin's just not going to be it ever. But
Don't say that yet. Edelweiss hasn't made a deck yet.
yeah, but I mean, Quest Hunter's another one, right? Like, there's a lot of damage dealing Hunter spells. That's, I mean, again, you're losing Multicaster, right? That was one of the big draw engines for Quest Hunter, but you do have Conjuring Arrow now. So you have some draw that's built into the into the kit. So you might be able to get like a Quest Hunter going. Quest Warlock certainly has plenty of stuff that you can do, and that's been, I mean, I think it got nerfed even more when it went out to Wild, and I think that's the same version that we're using in Twist. So it might still be a challenge, but it didn't seem to be that much of a challenge. So it's still something that's viable. One
thing I just thought about, how exactly is Tear Reality gonna work? Because with like, especially with like a lot of the older cards being in the core set, I think you could still discover some of those, like a Fireball or like a Blizzard or something like that. But I wonder if Tear Reality is going to be a little bit more.
Well, Tear Reality is random. It's not discover.
You only have so many cards to choose from, though.
Yeah, but I guess it would be just out of like whatever's still in Wild, like in Wild but not Twist, I would imagine. I'm not sure how that, or like I guess the 5-drop is neutral, the one that summons a 5-drop from the past. But yeah, I'm not sure how Tear Reality would work, if it's still going to be everything that's non-standard, or if it's going to be from outside of the card pool. I would think that it would be coded as outside of the card pool.
So I'm pretty sure that Tear Reality actually can hit cards that are in standard, because wild includes the cards that are in standard. So I think it'll work the same way for Twist and just be unchanged, right? Where you can get things that are wild exclusive, and maybe what you hit is also something that's in Twist.
So what I'm hearing is, oh wait, hold on, isn't Puzzle Box of Yaxaron Dark Moon Fair?
I believe I know the 7-mana spell that does 10 damage is Dark Moon Fair.
Mask of Cthulhu. I think
Mask
Puzzle
of
Box
Cthulhu.
is older.
I thought Puzzle Box was Old Doom.
Sounds about right. So there's at least a possibility for me to get my Yogg box. We still
But
have like
Rune of the Archmage is there.
Yeah.
No.
So you can, yeah.
Stop.
Yep.
I don't want these.
Yeah, Puzzle Box was Puzzle Box was Old Doom. So yeah. But
maybe next
yeah.
time.
But Rune of the Archmage was I think that was either Stormwind or Alterac Valley. So I mean, you could probably also just play Frost DK. Like, you could probably just do that if you want to. I did see Old Guardian playing Blood Death Knight. I don't know. I saw. Yeah, I saw Old Guardian playing Blood Death Knight on his stream, and I'm like, I mean, God bless him. That's not the first place that my brain would go in a format like this, but you know, somebody will try it. You know.
And now that I already said this earlier with like Death Knight having like a really bad like pool of cards or whatever, since it's very limited, and it also just doesn't have a lot of cards. Death Knight's been very dependent on his discover recently.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
you still have like Hematurge and whatnot, and like the specific Death Knight cards that can discover, but like you don't have Vizier, you don't have School Teacher, you don't have a lot of these resources that are so crucial to do well in Death Knight. And kind of like what you were saying with Frost DK, Frost DK is going to have to go in a completely different direction because it's carried by its early game package of neutral cards.
Yeah, like the Undeads are really and certainly Unholy is. Like Unholy, like not having Hawkstride or Rancher in Unholy Death Knight is a big blow.
Yeah, I think there's just not really a pool of DK cards to keep up with New Age specifically. They started with Outcast, so you've got all the Demon Hunter cards, so they're not disadvantaged. But I think it's just going to be one of those things where, I mean, it may be that for a while DK is more disadvantaged because of that, but I'm sure it will vary, format to format as they pick new things. Because I don't think they want to always have DK being handicapped.
Yeah, I mean, Demon Hunter in particular has like a number of class-specific packages. Like Relic Demon Hunter is pretty fine. Like you wouldn't run Vizier, but you can run most of the other cards and probably find some stuff like that's not in standard right now that you could fill in those gaps with. You could go back to playing Soul Demon Hunter if you wanted to.
Yep.
I mean, you've got things like multi-strike now, and I'm trying to think of what else there is that's like that's more like weapon specific, but I'm sure that like Glavetar in something like a Soul DH could work out pretty well too, potentially.
Eldari Studies also has a lot more Outcast cards that you can pull from, so maybe there's some kind of Outcast Demon Hunter that can do very well.
Yeah. The problem with Illidari Studies in this format is that the average cost of the cards that are going to be in there is going to go up, and you're going to get some awkward stuff like Star Student Selena, or Glide, right? That like when you're trying to like recur off of like the 2-drop, like you're going to get some stuff that's just awkward, or you're not going to have enough mana to do it. So that's going to be a little bit problematic. Though I guess like Halvaria with Sociologist Militia could be kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, because you still have a whole bunch of rushers. Okay.
Yeah. I guess it's too much mana, but if you put that, I don't know what kind of package you need to put in. You wouldn't put it in Relic because like you don't want to be discounting soul fragments, but maybe there's a way to discount, I guess you could use like the 2-drop that discounts the cards on the side of the hand and try to get that to happen. Like there's probably something interesting you could do there. It's also probably way too much work when you could just hit them in the face. So, I don't know if that's really going to be worth it, but it's something that you could try to do.
I mean, I was looking at the fact that there is the big taunt demon that recruits. So you could potentially get Fellscale Evoker turn where you pull the 7/9 taunt demon, and then at the end of your turn, it pulls another big demon and just have like this really massive swing turn. And, you've still got that Infuse 3 Demons card. All Fell breaks loose. And so if, say, they do somehow clear that board, you just immediately summon the exact same board again and then recruit another demon. Just that, like, one edition of that 7/9 taunt demon. Maybe you also put the void whatever thing in as well, the 10/10 that like sucks the power
that sucks one health and one attack from each
probably not. I feel like that one was always a little win more, but yeah, there's some pretty interesting options available there for sure.
One deck I'm kind of looking forward to playing again is Quest Warlock, actually, because now that each step of the quest is 10 damage, it's really going to be it's not going to be as easy to complete the quest. And the only reason why I'm saying this is because I saw a Rarin video that was highlighting that in particular. And that I said that I like D6 Warlock here at the beginning of the podcast, so it's bringing back some good vibes.
Yeah, and you also have like the 15/15 lifesteal now that you can play in the Quest Warlock.
Oh my god, we do. There's just so many cool things that we could do with this format. Like I understand the sentiment of like we're worried about like who exactly this game mode is for. It's just for people that enjoy playing goofy formats, man. Like that's just something that I feel like we've been asking for years, and this is why I'm just so excited for Twist.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a lot of options, and I think that it's not necessarily going to be clear like what the best thing is right off the bat. But you could also play things that are sort of familiar to you and just kind of like amp them up a little bit, right? Like you could play a Spooky Mage and just, throw some more stuff in there and still just play the same deck that you were playing, but just kind of go a little bit further. You're going to have all the heroes back again too, right? So like you're going to be able to, you could just play Spooky Mage or Burn Mage, but you could also have Varden or Magister Dawngrasp in the deck, right? So it's going to be, you're not going to be able to brand a reckless apprentice anymore, but good. And but there's other things that you can do there to be able to kind of take some of the decks that you've been playing now if you want to, or the decks that you used to really like, and then just kind of, give them a power boost with some of the newer cards that we've gotten.
And like, you remember when everyone on Twitter was freaking out about how Fire Tony Warrior was going to be the best deck in the format when it first got released? I feel like there's always that fear of like, oh man, why would Blizzard let such an uninteractive, combo exist? I like this approach that they're doing right now, where they're letting the good things be good and then toning them down if they become a little bit too powerful. Because let's be honest, who wants to play a weak Hearthstone deck? Like, it's one thing when a deck is degenerate, but you want to play with the strong stuff because the strong stuff is it's just naturally going to be more fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, this is going to be like a heavyweight match whenever you're playing, right? Like it's going to be a high power format, but it's going to be a format that we're not already playing, which is, I think, what a lot of people want. And I think it'll be pretty clear after like a week or so. Like, I think the main challenge is just that the season's short. So it's like, do I craft, like, we get these questions all the time. Like, do I craft X card? Right. But which is usually the context is I have very limited dust and I don't know if I should spend it on this card because I don't know if I'm going to get any value out of it anymore. And like, that's a hard thing to do if you're limited on dust. For a format that's only going to be around for a month, but then it also could swing back around in 6 months. Like, we don't know how often they're going to revisit formats or just kind of go back to some of these formats. So it might be the kind of thing where you're just kind of putting together a quote unquote budget deck with just like standard cards. But I think that there are some standard decks that Still could be fine in this format with even just like a couple of crafts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's gonna be noticeable, the difference between this and Wild in terms of how close you're maybe gonna be able to get with some of the standard decks.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't know that it's necessarily going to be like, oh my god, what the hell happened, right? I think it's not, because like sometimes in Wild it's just like, well, wait, what the hell just happened? I don't even know what that card was, right? And I think that limiting the card pool in this way kind of like, it's a lot of cards, but it's also a manageable number of cards, which is cool too.
We're gonna have to tread lightly. What's gonna be the new meme
Oh
retwist?
no.
uh,
It's just gonna be John Travolta dancing. That's what it's gonna be.
Oh, well, the scene from Pulp Fiction, right? That's the twist
Yeah,
that they're doing. Oh god, I know that dance.
yeah, and when people are upset with the meta, they can twist and shout.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that's probably a sign we should probably wrap it up before we degenerate further.
Well, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com, and write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. I'm planning on this weekend getting something special up on the shop, so hopefully we'll have an update next week about that. Big thank you to our producers, Number Theory, Doge Decay, Crash, Cap, Beef Squatch, David P, Fade to Black, Walu, Jeremy T, Bottle Caps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, and Enraged Chicken. Coin Concedes. I guess I'll start. So first, I have Coin Concedes to Mad at Arms and Jared Pollitt. This reminds me that I forgot to mention this on the show, but I posted to Twitter the registry, my wife and I's baby registry. The due date is coming up in August, which means could be as early as like mid-July. Who knows? So I figured it was time to post the registry and kind of get things rolling. And Mad at Arms and Jared Pollitt, two people I know pretty well from the Hearthstone community, were kind enough to get us some things off there. So coin concede to them. And then also coin concede to Storm Rage and Smarms from over on Blizzlet. We recorded a bonus episode of Blizzlet together that was not at all Hearthstone related, or I suppose sort of tangentially, but it was mostly about sort of Pride stuff. We did focus a lot on trans stuff because it is sort of the current battleground, but just kind of explaining a lot of the trials and tribulations and, dispelling certain misinformation and just sort of explaining stuff. Obviously, I'm biased, but I really think if you are, maybe uncomfortable about some of all this trans stuff, if it's a new thing to you, just check it out. I really opened up over there and kind of shared a lot of my experience. It's, different experience in every case, but I think that the best thing we can all do is try and educate ourselves.
I'm gonna coin concede to Pilot because they basically single-handedly saved my stream on Monday night, because they were the one who suggested that I switch to the Evolve Shaman and gave me the list, because I was not in a happy place after getting Insatiable Devoured and just like, kind of spiraling into a bit of a salt mine, and I don't like doing that on stream. Like, that's not how I like to, conduct myself, but I also just kept getting blown out either by my own mistakes or just by weird stuff that I wasn't able to anticipate. And Pilot just said, here, just try this and go hit them in the face. Like, okay, I think this is, I don't, it's not something I do often, but sometimes when things are going poorly, I just need to, reset and start hitting people in the face, and it worked. So I was appreciative of that. So.
Well, I guess that leaves me. I will give my coin concede to Edelweiss, to Robobson, and to First Night of Knee, the people that were on my production for the tournament, because I absolutely could not have done a lot of the stuff by myself. And like I said earlier, throwing a tournament is something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do something like this within Hearthstone, and it's difficult to set up that kind of stuff. There's just a lot of time, a lot of organizing, and a lot of not necessarily making tough decisions, but I couldn't get everybody on the same date, so I had to let some people go for that kind of thing. So just having any sort of help with that has been absolutely a huge weight off my shoulders. I'd also like to give a coin concede to its finals. I just hired him as a video editor, so that is really going to help flesh out the schedule of my content, as well as I can focus more on the creative stuff and just work on more ideas that I have been sitting on for a while. One in particular, the Grumble effect, where we talk about how Grumble was like completely unplayable, and then suddenly when they included Shutterwalk, it was the best legendary ever. So there's a lot of ideas I'm sitting on, and I'm just really happy to start, actually moving towards completing these projects I've been sleeping on.
That's funny. We refer to that on this show as the Zentimo effect.
Yes.
Where Zentimo
Yeah.
was completely unplayable, but then Galakron Shaman became a thing, and it was suddenly just a staple in that deck, so you could get your, triple of the Frost Invoke spell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zentimo is the reason I don't post my dusting guides until like the last patch right before rotation, because that card would have been on it for like a year and 3/4, and all of a sudden, Galakron Shaman came out. Like, oh, yep, Zentimo. There we go. But that's gonna do it for us for this week. So keep calm and twist it up. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All right, you can stop
Stopping
recording.
Yep. And then did I put the thing in the thing? That is those are good words. I have the best words. Yeah. Hold on. Did I have to give you the No, I did. I gave you the Google Drive. So yeah, once you export that to MP3, just throw that in the Google Drive, and then we'll be good.
Okay. It's gonna take a couple minutes for it to
That's
download.
fine. Yeah, it's not a big
immediately.
deal. And we should find someone to raid.
Be honest, I'm gonna edit on Saturday anyway.
Yeah. Is somebody who's doing...
There's Raw in Mexico.
Yeah. I wanted to do somebody who's playing Twist, though.
Oh, is that still going on? I thought that ended an hour ago. If
sorry,
so,
I've been holding in that
Corbett...
sneeze for 2 hours, apparently. Yeah, Corbett's playing Twist, he says, on his thing, so we could raid Corbett. That seems like...
Sure.
Yep, he's still doing it.
Yep. Okay, so let me... Is he just Corbett?
Oh, wait, isn't the event going on for 24 hours?
Yeah, I think it is, because,
I
like, you have...
so.
Yeah.
People, different regions, etc.
Yeah, he's just Corbett, right? Yeah, okay. So we're going to raid Corbett. And... Did that... Oh, because I did that from the wrong place, that's why. Like, why isn't that working? Oh, because I'm logged in as me and not as the show. There we go. That did it. Okay. So we're going to raid Corbett, and thanks everybody for coming out, and we'll see you next week, and we'll have a lot to talk about with Twist next week, sounds like, among other things, possibly. All right. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.